So I work at a small local guitar shop, and one of the questions people always ask me is, Logan, what are the best strings for me? I'm going to answer that in this video. Before we get into it, I wanted to let you know that I teach private one-on-one lessons that can be scheduled over Skype, Zoom, FaceTime, whatever works best for you. And here's the thing, I'm willing to give you your first lesson for free. Also, after that, they're quite affordable. So if you're interested in that, there will be my email down in the description box. Just reach out to me and we'll get started. All right, let's get into it. Quick note, all of the strings that I'm talking about today, I'm going to have linked in the description box. I'm not being paid to say any of this, but these will be affiliate links, so if you want to support my channel with no cost to you, if you click one of those links, I make a small commission. First thing you gotta know is whether or not your guitar strings are going to be electric guitar strings or acoustic guitar strings. This might seem obvious, but it is very important, and there is a significant difference. So look for it in the title of the item you're looking at or in the description. Just make sure you keep an eye out for it. Secondly, the gauge of your strings might be one of the most important things to get right. So for a child who hasn't been playing for very long on acoustic guitar, I might go with something like 9s. Whereas an adult who's been playing longer, maybe something more like 12s, which is what I use. I think there's a nice happy medium at about 10s or 11s. Now, what are all of these numbers and what am I talking about? Well, I apologize that these are half open, but right here along the side, these are electric guitar strings, and they have these numbers along the side. Sometimes they have them up here depending on what kinds of strings you buy. Right here, you will look for the lowest number. On these, the lowest number is 10, and it's at the top. See that? Right there. So these are 10 gauge electric guitar strings. They're fairly heavy for electric guitar, but I personally love those strings. And as I said, a good area to be in for acoustic guitar might be 11s or 12s for an adult, or 9s or 10s for a kid. The lower the gauge, the easier to play. The higher the gauge, the more tone. So if you're more worried about learning guitar and really picking up the instrument, a lower gauge might be better for you. If you're looking to play in the studio or on stage or whatever, a higher gauge will typically sound better. Now, I said I use 10s and they are a fairly high gauge. I've even had people comment to me that I'm working too hard for it. But I really like the tone, I like how it feels. Something a little bit more reasonable might be an 8 or a 9. If you go below a 7, in my experience, it starts to get harder to play rather than easier. Thirdly, what brand should you use? This is a big part in the discussion, and I think it should definitely not be left out. I think one of the most important things for you to know is that once you find the perfect gauge for you and the perfect brand, you should stick with it rather than experimenting too much, because there's a certain muscle memory that comes with using the same strings over and over again. The ones I showed you, the regular slinky electric guitar strings, the 10s, I've been using since I really started playing guitar, and that might be a big factor in why I like them so much, is because I haven't really changed them since I started. So I'm going to pull up some things on Amazon here for you. Let's do acoustic players first. I would go with either the Elixirs, right here, or the Deodarios, right here. So there is a significant price difference, and I'm going to explain why. I like both of these strings, but I prefer the Elixirs. Here's why. The Elixirs will last longer because they are coated with polytetrafluoroethylene. They are also more premium strings. The good sound will last longer because of that, but sometimes my wallet doesn't allow for that, so I go for the Deodarios. Now, the Deodarios do sound really good too, don't get me wrong. I use those all the time. Sound great in the studio, on stage, wherever. There's not a huge difference in between the two of them, but the Elixirs do last longer. So then that draws up the question of how much longer do they last, and is it worth the price difference? It really depends on how long these strings last on your guitar and how long you use them, so that's up for you to decide. But I've found that a lot of times they get really close, and sometimes I can save money by using Elixir strings. For example, I usually change my strings once a month when I'm using Deodarios, but if I'm using Elixir strings, it's once every other month to even once every 3 months that I'll change my strings on my acoustic guitar. It is really up to you Both strings sound great, they feel great, and there isn't a huge difference between the playability in them if you get the same gauge. Now, if your budget's really tight and you want something below $10, Martin strings are a great option for you. You can also make them last quite a while, supposing that you don't break a string. My sister was able to make the Martin strings last, I think, about 6 months. So they can last longer. Now, they don't sound as great as time progresses, and they are not coated, but they do work. And for somebody who is learning guitar, these might be a perfect option. They're quite a bit cheaper, and they will last quite a while, but in my opinion, their tone gets quite dull after the first month or so. So I changed mine after the first month. I highly advise you to buy strings in packs of 3 or more. You will save a lot of money, trust me. Whenever you're buying strings, buy them in packs of 3. Now, there is one caveat to this, is that if you're trying out different gauges and different brands, you should probably buy them in ones to make sure you like them before you get like a pack of 3, for instance. But if you know what brand you like and you know what gauge you like, buy them in packs of 3 or like 20 or something, because you will save money over the long haul. Now, I mentioned polytetrafluoroethylene, which is what covers Elixir strings. What does that do? Well, when you play guitar, your hands aren't necessarily perfectly clean. They have oils on them, they have dirt on them, etc., and that stuff corrodes your strings and kind of makes the tone more dull. Elixir strings coat them with this stuff that prevents some of that corrosion and makes your tone stay brighter for a longer period of time. Okay, so we've talked about acoustic guitar strings and which ones you should buy. Now, I've already kind of mentioned what strings I prefer for electric guitar, but there are other options that I would suggest. So Ernie ball strings, always my favorite. They are great, and they aren't too expensive. Now, some other strings. Dario makes great strings for electric guitar players too, and I've used a couple of those over my time as a guitar player, like these. Like I said, I'm a tens guy. You see up here, it says tens. These things sound good. I mean, there's nothing super crazy about them, but if you're looking for another option, these are perfectly viable. Now, they also have Elixir strings for electric guitar, but I don't think it's really worth it for electric guitar. Less of your tone comes from your strings on electric guitar, in my opinion. Alright, so that's all I have for you on this topic. However, if you would like additional information on this topic, heck, if you wanted to send me your exact situation and get a perfect recommendation just for you, just leave a comment down below and I'll be getting back to you shortly. While you're here, please remember to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. You guys have a wonderful, wonderful day. You're watching Logan's Lessons.